Hey squad, Jakus here, and do you know what's better than being disappointed? Being disappointed twice! Also on an unrelated note, there's a second Sonic game. So after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991, Sega needed something big to follow it up. Sonic was a smashing success, and this was somewhat anticipated as they immediately began development on a follow-up, which was released the next year as Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Very brave title. My personal experience with Sonic 2 began, just like with its predecessor, with Sonic Classic Collection for the Nintendo DS. Strangely, this was the game that I never really played. I have vivid memories of eventually beating Green Hill and of failing horribly at Angel Island and Mushroom Hill, but for Sonic 2 I got nothing. That was until a few years back, when I found out they ported Sonic 2 to mobile. Back then, you had to pay for it on Android, so I did some consumerism and I jumped right in. Now these days, Sonic 2 is my personal favourite of the classics. Sonic 2 is, in a nutshell, everything the first game did, but better. Sonic Team took what worked for the original and expanded upon it, while throwing the stuff that didn't in the trash. You know, the special stages, Labyrinth Zone, the 3-act structure, Labyrinth Zone, the slow pacing, Labyrinth. They introduced Tails, a cute new companion who allowed for multiplayer or could just be an AI to keep you company. Now I'm only lonely in the real world, also known as the Spin Dash, which allows the player to rev up and zoom off within a second. Jumping into the first level, Emerald Hill Zone is often forgotten when talking about Sonic zones, and I don't really understand why. They took what made Green Hill the best of the first and added more on. Instead of just loops, there are loops that roll into other loops while going downhill. There are new corkscrews, where you have to keep your speed up or risk falling to the bottom path. Emerald Hill is a huge improvement over Green Hill, and yet it's the latter that always gets brought back in newer games. Despite selling roughly the same as the first game, the first level is not nearly as iconic. And I think I know why. Yes, Chemical Plant is the second level. This zone is intense, but in a really fun way. The stage is huge, you're almost always at full speed and the music is a bop. Chemical Plant is generally regarded to be the highlight of Sonic 2, and I understand why. As far as second levels go, Chemical Plant puts Marble Zone to shame. While Marble severely broke the pacing, Chemical Plant knows what you want and literally runs with it. There are always 2, 3 or even 4 paths happening at the same time when running through this zone, and it makes for an incredibly fun, replayable experience. Aquatic Ruin. Don't worry, this isn't like Labyrinth. Aquatic Ruin Zone is the only water-themed zone in the classic games, excluding Mid, to allow you to entirely skip the water. There's always a top path, which stays completely dry as long as you have the skill to stay up there. This is what people love about classic Sonic level design. If you play well, you're rewarded with a faster, more fun level. If you mess up, you're punished by being dropped into the slow water below. To me, Aquatic Ruin is the perfect example of a water level done right. Casino Night Zone takes the bounciness of Sonic's physics and pushes it to the extreme. This is the upgraded version of Spring Yard, and it shows. All around are bumpers, springs, and the brand new pinball flippers. Sonic's momentum is used both for and against him here, and it plays surprisingly really well. There's a neat mechanic in which Sonic is dropped into a pinball machine. In the center is a slot where if Sonic enters it, it will spin like a slot machine and either reward or punish the player. Got 3 Sonics? That's a lot of new rings for your collection. Oh, but you've got 3 Robotniks? Say goodbye to all those rings. I have yet to mention the bosses in the game, as most of the time they're not very special. The Casino Night boss, however, is unique in that it takes place in one of the pinball machines, and Sonic must use the flippers to bounce himself onto Robotnik's machine and destroy it. A lot of people complain about the music in Hilltop Zone, but personally, I like it, and I don't find it annoying. With regards to the rest of the level, it's fine, nothing of note to be honest. Hilltop is the first zone that feels like a small pace breaker, however for the most part it's a fine level. I enjoy the enclosed sections with the rising lava. I think they add some much needed tension to an otherwise fairly forgettable level. Mystic Cave Zone is one of my personal favourites. It has banging music, looks really pretty, and has crushing pillars of death. What more could you want? There are also blocks that can crush you easily if you don't pay attention. Unfortunately, unlike Aquatic Ruin, you can't easily avoid the hazards in this stage. This zone acts as a turning point in the game, as it starts to get much trickier here. I'm sorry, but no, Oil Ocean is not good. There are unfair enemy placements that genuinely cannot be avoided when going fast. A lot of the level is spent shooting from cannon to cannon, and they brought back the slides from Labyrinth. Why would you bring back anything from Labyrinth? I think this zone has the potential to be good. They've proved that in Sonic Mania, but here, it just ends up as a slow slog, which is not ideal for a Sonic game. For most stages, the act count was decreased from 3, as it was in Sonic 1, to 2. In my opinion, this is the optimal amount of acts. Introduce the zone in the first act, expand upon it and make it more challenging in the second. Metropolis Zone, the hardest, longest, and least fair zone in the game, has 3 acts. It is widely believed that an act from the unused Wood Zone was placed here, but that just resulted in imbalance. The level itself is not great either, particularly those slicer robots and the giant screws that force you to run on the spot, only to send you spinning into insta-death crushing spikes. Fun. Sky Chase is a 1-act zone, and it's just Sonic and Tails chilling in the tornado, waiting for the next level. It's fine, mostly boring with a not ideal glitch in which Sonic can run too fast and fall off, plummeting into the void below, but it's not too much of a challenge. Wing Fortress Zone is most well known for having an easy skip that skips most of the level. Beyond that, I see it as a precursor to Sonic and Knuckles' Flying Battery Zone. It's clear to me that they needed more time to figure out how to scale difficulty in these games. From the platforms which disappear into the wall, fan-assisted floating that makes controlling the hedgehog a pain, and some of the most precarious platforming in the series, death is likely, and you're likely to not have many lives left after Oil Ocean and Metropolis. I listened to the Sonic 2 soundtrack a lot while writing the script for this video, and the Death Egg Zone music is really fascinating. I've played this zone countless times, but you hear that music for, what, 3 seconds? It's really weird. Anyway, this one is pretty interesting. You're thrust in with no rings, where you're up against the robotic Silver Sonic, whose attacks are quick and unpredictable, and then, if you beat that, you're thrown into the final boss room, still with no rings, where you fight the Death Egg Robot. The Death Egg Robot is a cool boss for sure, but this strangely inconsistent hitbox, and the instant death due to the lack of rings, goes against it and against the zone as a whole. The special stages this time are the rather infamous half pipes. You have to collect rings and avoid bombs to get the Chaos Emeralds. Alone, this is fine, but with Tails, it can quickly become a mess. He will move slightly after you do, and he is so much more prone to crashing into those pesky bombs. You find the special stages by passing checkpoint posts with 50 or more rings, at which point a red ring appears over the post. Due to the amount of these posts lying around, you can actually unlock Supersonic in Emerald Hill if you're skilled enough. I am not skilled enough. Collect all 7 to unlock Supersonic, a copyright infringing clone and a superpowered form that is invulnerable to most hazards. Much like the first game, the best way to play this game right now is the mobile port or Sonic Origins. It adds time trials, boss rush, achievements, online rankings, and does something truly incredible. In the original game, there is an infamous pit in Mystic Cave that, if you run into it before dropping a bridge over it, you get stuck on the spikes and eventually die. However, as Supersonic, you're forced to wait for literal minutes as your ring count decreases and then you eventually die. But in the port, you drop down here and you end up in the Hidden Palace Zone, a stage that is famous for being cut from the original despite being near completion. It's a really cool Easter egg, and it really makes this the definitive version of Sonic 2, not to mention that it's in widescreen, 60 FPS, the special stages are actually playable, you get the point. I like Sonic 2. No, I love Sonic 2. It took everything that made the first game so memorable and cranked it up to the max. There are a few misses here, such as Oil Ocean, Metropolis and Death Egg, but overall this is a really solid experience. Even if you don't like this game as much as say Sonic 3 or Sonic Adventure, it's hard not to appreciate that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is an incredibly solid experience. Wow, that game was really good. The classic Sonic games are all really solid and they're getting better. I sure hope that the next one is to the same standard of quality and oh damn it, it's Sonic CD!